Alright, so we're going to be going over the basics of handrails. So let's start with, what is the most basic kind of handrail we can make? Well, use this. I've never used this whiteboard before, so we're going to see how well it does. Alright, and so, most basic kind of handrail we can make. Oh wait, we got different colors. Do green. Green's for the ground. And we'll say, this is our ground right here. That's ground level. Need to put not to scale, NTS. Alright? That's ground. Now, the most basic kind of rail we can make is a post. Let's make that a bigger post. Look, piece of square tube. I like using square tube. Unless they ask me to use round, I'm going to use square tube. Alright? 2 posts. And normally how I like to do it, if I'm doing it my way, is I will put the piece, our long piece, on top of the post, as opposed to the inside right there, right? That way you cap the ends and it's a continuous smooth surface, because you can splice these together and the general public will not know it's been spliced, but me and my OCD, I know it's been spliced and it irritates the crap out of me. So, a basic handrail, right? 3 pieces of square tube. What's our rules for this? Well, according to ADA code, that's American Disability Act code, it can be from the top here to the ground here. It can be me and a whiteboard. Ideally 36 inches. Ideally 36 inches. But you have 34 to 38 inches. So anywhere in that spectrum is just fine. Some people will say, if they give you very specific, we want 38, we want it to be up high. Some people will say, we want 34 because reasons. If they don't, I shoot for 36 because it's dead in the middle. And 36 is really what everyone expects. So when they pull a tape and they start taping, they expect to see 36. So, there we go. That's our code. Right? That's our code right there. Now, if it's 36 inches, let's imagine material that we use. I normally use the square tube would be 1.5 SQTUBE. 0.5 square tube, 14 gauge is what I normally use. I have to move it around. 14 gauge is weldable, and it's light and you can move it around, yet it does the purpose. Look at that. I did learn how to use a whiteboard in school. So, now, it's an inch and a half, right? How do we get our measurement for what these posts are supposed to be? Well, it's actually ridiculously simple. 36 minus an inch and a half. What does 36 minus 1.5 inches give you? Right? So let's see here. 35, 34 and a half. So, I should think about that. 34.5 inches is what your post needs to be. Because when you put the 1.5 square tube on top of it, it then makes it 36 inches. Alright? Those are things to keep in mind as you're putting your handrails together. If it was 2 inches, which I don't know if everybody uses 2. Some people, my old boss used to use 2 all the time. And I've never been on a job where they asked me to use 2. Every job I've been on wants 1.5 inches. I've never been on a job where they asked for 2. But my old boss, he used 2 for everything. And honestly, I think 2 is awkward. You know, it's kind of big to get your hand around if you're walking. I really like 1.5 inches. Maybe it's just because me, I'm a smaller frame person. But if it was 2 inches, then you would subtract 36 minus 2, and it would be 34 inches instead of 34.5 that your post would have to be. And then what you do, if you're just making like a singular rail like this, you make 2 34.5-inch pieces. So we can actually make, based off of these plans, a cut list. Now we'll come up with something crazy here. We'll say this is like, let me think here. We'll say it's like 5 feet, all right? In a metal rail, we can totally get away at 5 feet. Whoops. Oh, get off of that. 5 foot. For some people, it's probably painful watching me use a whiteboard. But say that's 5 feet. Now we can make a cut list, right? So let's make our cut list for this right here. This is what we would put at the chop saw, or we would give our guy working the chop saw. Fortunately, I've had some great employees. I've not had to use a chop saw in a while, and I'm so grateful for it, and I will gladly pay them so I don't have to sit there and run the chop saw. I don't like the chop saw, right? I did that for a long time at my first welding job. I was chop saw guy. I'm done being chop saw guy. I will gladly pay somebody $15 an hour to sit there and run that chop saw so I don't have to. All right. So, cut list. Make this our cut list. Right. So we're gonna need one piece at 5 foot. I'm not going to worry about doing that, converting it to inches. Some people, all their plans got to be inches. Guys, a cut list. You're going to have a 5 foot mark on your freaking tape measure. Don't worry about it, all right? Don't confuse the poor guy at the chop saw table, right? So, 5 foot. Now, we need 2 at 34 and a half. Now, this is just the railing part right here, all right? Now, this could be different depending on how we're securing it. How are we securing this? If we're securing it into the ground, like dirt ground, like concrete, now we gotta do something. How I do all this stuff when I'm securing it into the ground with concrete is I put about 1.5 foot on the bottom. So, oh God, I gotta convert that to inches. 12 plus 6, 18. So, now, 18 inches below the ground, and then I take a couple pieces of rebar, and I just weld them to it. Weld a piece of rebar to it, and cement it in. That's how I do it. There's no, unless you're given something really specific and they say it's gotta be done this way, don't overdo it. You're gonna kill yourself overdoing it. Just don't, alright? If you have a way that you anchor it in the ground that works for you, great. This is how I do it. It's perfectly okay to weld rebar to the bottom of your post unless they specifically say don't. It's perfectly okay because it's handrails, for goodness sake, alright? So this is if, you know, let me grab a green marker. Let me kind of do it on a hole. And then that's if we're securing it into the concrete. Now, your 34.5, we have to add 18 inches to. Alright? That's that mounting situation. 9 times out of 10, I'm mounting rails into something solid. So, if we're mounting into something solid, say this right here is, let's say, dirt. C-O-N-C. Concrete. I don't know how to spell concrete out all the way off the top of my head. Concrete is a very common thing to put handrails into, or cement, or concrete, whatever. We use a base plate. I like to use 4x4 3/16 inch base plates. So, let's draw this up real quick. 4 4x4. Now this is all assuming you are the one drawing up the plan, right? They may give you something different. We want a round base plate, okay? Then they give you a plan, right? If you're building it, somebody says, I just want some metal handrails, fill this area, your discretion. This is my discretion. A 4x4. And then, 4x4, I have several different anchors, and I always want to give it a little bit more room than the size of the anchor. So, always 4 holes, about 1 inch in. I don't know if you guys can even see the little 1 inch right there. Let me go grab the anchors I use. These are the anchors I use all the time. My old boss loved to use cement epoxy. I hated that because the fact is, I want it done now. I'm installing it now. I'm not syncing them, then coming back tomorrow and putting it together. I'm doing it now. So if they don't ask for something specific, this is what I use. And these little anchors right here are genius. This is a 3/8 right here. So by the time you drill a 1/2 inch hole, put a washer on it. You drill the hole for this with your hammer drill. Beat it into the ground, and then you stick our bolt on it, and this little sleeve catches. And as you tighten it up, you can see that sleeve right here. The sleeve slides and expands out, anchoring into the concrete. See the little studs on it? Anchors into the concrete. You can see it's a conical shaft. So you beat this in, bottom pinches and grabs, and this grabs too, and when you tighten it, it anchors in. It's an instantaneous anchor. You're not waiting for stuff to dry or all of that crap. Alright? And 3/8 is the perfect size, and they even give you drill instructions, so what drill bit to use and whatnot. It says on the back here. It's got little instructions on the back here. And I get these are Redhead Thunderbolt wedge anchors. I get them at Lowe's. There are some new anchors that have come out. They're supposed to be very good, but I don't have much experience with them besides, using them to hold frickin' wire hangers onto concrete and stuff. So these new anchors that they push on you at Lowe's and Home Depot, I wouldn't. They're blue. They're like these blue bolts with really funky threads. I wouldn't use those quite yet. I would wait for some experience and let somebody else experiment with those. Cause I'll stick with these. All right. So, and in this post right here, there's no need to make it a quarter. All right, guys. Listen, I know you love to use big, thick steel, and you think, oh yeah, big, thick steel is gonna be there forever. Yeah, no one cares. I guarantee you, no one except you cares. I've done this long enough. The people you're building these handrails for, it means nothing to them, right? They don't care, and it really structurally makes no difference. 3/16 or a 1/4 inch base plate, use 3/16. Why? Because it's easier to cut and it's easier to weld to, and it'll work the exact same way that the frickin' 1/4 inch will. For what you're doing, it doesn't matter. All right. Another thing, you don't need to over the top build these things. If you are spending all this time doing really thick steel for most of these handrails, you don't need 1/4 inch, 1.5 inch, 1/4 inch, or 2 inch, 1/4 inch tube for this. That's ridiculous. What on earth kind of handrails use that? I mean, I'm sure there are places that do use it and they ask for it for specific reasons, but if they're not asking for it, you're just doing little household stuff or around the house or things like that, excuse me, this is just fine. All right. Oh, and that's the other thing we have to add to our cut list. We have to cut. Basically, when I do this, when I buy the steel for the base plates, is I buy a 4 inch piece of flat bar, and 3/16 4-inch flat bar. That way, you just mark it to 4 and cut it, and then somebody goes to drill press and drills the holes. It ain't hard. So now we need 2 4x4, and there we go. It's our cut list, depending, right? And then what you do to cap the ends, what I do is I take this square tube here and I will cut it 1.5 inches. Then I'll take the grinder, zip, 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 and cut it into 4 pieces, and then those make the caps. Alright? So, basic square tube handrail on the ground. Alright? This is a basic square tube handrail on the ground. Alright? Part 1. We're going to go to part number 2 here, which is going to be doing a staircase. And this is where it gets complicated, and we got to use trigonometry. Ah! And you know, it just hurts your head, and I already got a headache just thinking about it, because sometimes I really just wing it and kind of go, I hope it works. So, yeah. Part 2, doing a staircase.